The season finale of Invincible Season 4 is officially here, so let's get right into it. Because today we're talking Invincible Season 4, Episode 8, breakdown and review. But before we get into anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Alright, getting into this episode, let's just go over some of the things that I absolutely loved, because this episode actually felt like an extension to Episode 5 of this season, and we got a lot of moments that I wanted to happen in Episode 5, so it actually made me enjoy Episode 5 even more because we did get these things that I really wanted between certain characters. So starting out, one of the scenes that I absolutely loved was when Mark started having those visions and we get to see what we think is happening on Earth with the Viltrumites slaughtering an entire city, causing a tsunami, only for us, the audience, to realize this is quite literally just Mark imagining the worst possible scenario. And this would be something that continued throughout the episode. And I'll be honest, every single time aside from one, I thought what he was seeing actually was happening because it was all incredibly believable for each and every one of the characters in those situations. It was extremely believable that what he was seeing was actually happening. We've seen firsthand what the Viltrumites are capable of. We've seen how cruel they are. However, now they have the rage of losing their entire planet. So Mark being incredibly freaked out by this absolutely makes sense. However, once they do return to Earth, they don't see any signs of the Viltrumites at all, so they assume that they haven't arrived there yet, or they're out somewhere else hiding, plotting their next move. And it's at this time we do get one of my other favorite moments from this episode, and that's actually the reunion between Debbie and Mark. It is extremely emotional as her son quite literally went off to war against all-powerful beings, so her finding out that her son is okay. However, Oliver sustained injuries serious enough that he had to stay back. That definitely got her upset, and understandably so. However, this touching moment was interrupted by Thrag coming down and killing Debbie. And in this moment, I thought Debbie was dead. I thought in this season finale, they were going to absolutely tear our hearts out and make us witness such a beloved character and such an integral character to the story get absolutely murked within the first 15 minutes. And then not only would we, the audience, grieve, we would also see the main character grieve. And not just that, we would see Omni-Man, who has gone on this incredible transformation, and Debbie has quite literally been a major part of that. He would then have to grieve her as well. This would have caused so many things, and honestly, although it would have given us some epic moments and some incredibly emotional scenes between characters, I am so happy that this was also just part of Mark's visions, him constantly seeing Viltrumites slaughter people, because if we had lost Debbie, I would have been really sad. She is one of the best parts of the show, and she is quite literally the reason that Mark did not turn against Earth, so losing her would feel like a major loss to the story and for all of the characters. And this episode actually continued to do this, and virtually every time I believed it. These situations that they were creating made sense. After this, we do get a reunion between Mark and Eve is noticeably different. However, despite this, the thing that I absolutely love about this moment, Mark does not care at all. In fact, it isn't even addressed. All we see is they reunite, and then it pans up to all of their clothes, so they obviously had sex, and then after this happens, a little bit more time passes, and Eve is the one that brings it up. And Mark simply puts his hand on her face and reassures her that none of that matters. He is just happy to be with her. He loves her. And this is why these two are one of the best fictional couples in all of animation, at least so far. We're only 4 seasons in. However, up to this point, they are absolutely amazing, and they have some of the best scenes in the entire series and some of the best scenes in this episode, and this specific scene is absolutely amazing. Mark also tells Eve a little bit about what happened, a little bit about the Viltrumites and how absolutely absurd everything was, and it's just really nice to see both of these characters being there for each other. And speaking of Mark's PTSD, we then get to see a little bit of a reunion between Mark and William, and as they're walking along, Mark once again has a PTSD vision, and this time he sees Anissa absolutely slaughtering people, ripping off people's jaws, and this is the one moment that I could absolutely tell it was not actually happening for a couple of reasons. However, I think the most significant one is Anissa has never shown this level of violence towards Earthlings. She was the only one who came down to Earth to talk to Mark. She was the only one who genuinely saved people on Earth, and she respected what Mark wanted multiple times. She even let him leave to go save people. So I feel like seeing her just slaughter all these people would have been a little out of character for everything we've seen about her up until this point. And lo and behold, it is revealed that this was just once again another vision that Mark was having, just further showing us, the audience, how much he is absolutely losing it thanks to the PTSD he suffered at the hands of Thrag, which is understandable because Thrag is an absolute menace. However, that does not end everything that is going on for Mark, because after this, another scene that I absolutely love, Adam Eve finally tells Mark about her pregnancy. However, something else to note, she also tells him what her ultimate decision was and how she came to that decision, because she ended up having an abortion. She said that going through everything alone was going to be incredibly difficult, and that makes sense. At that point, Mark had been gone for multiple months. She never knew if she was going to see him again. So not only would she have to deal with the fact that she lost the love of her life, she also lost the first person she loved in Rex. But then on top of that, having to deal with raising a kid as well would be incredibly difficult. And I like in this moment that Mark comforts Eve pretty much immediately. He apologizes for being gone. He assures her that everything's going to be okay, that he is there for her. And this is why I absolutely love this couple. No matter what the other is going through, they're always going to be there 100% for their significant other. They will table whatever they are feeling just to make sure the other person is okay. And this is pointed out time and time again, even by the characters in the story. So it's just a really wholesome relationship, and I absolutely love it because we, the audience, can really believe that these two characters absolutely love each other more than anything. Speaking of reunions and loving people more than anything, we get another reunion, and that is between Debbie and Omni-Man. Yes, Omni-Man and Debbie part 2 reuniting, and this one is a little bit different. Debbie is pretty much telling him to leave, get out of here right away. She has nothing more to say to him, and she even says that she told him never to come back, and she gets mad at the fact that he left Oliver, that he allowed Oliver to be hurt so bad. And in this moment, Nolan actually super speeds in front of her, and for a moment it seems like she's afraid of him, but then it very quickly goes away. And I actually really like this moment because I feel like it's showing the audience that although Debbie does recognize Nolan is a monster, she in her heart knows that she personally doesn't have anything to fear. Now, would she have felt this way all the way back at the end of season 1? I don't think so. However, after everything she's gone through and the fact that she's seen and heard about different things that Nolan has done, how he has changed, I feel like that has changed her perspective and made her realize certain things about Omni-Man. They do not end up getting back together and having this happy-go-lucky relationship, at least not yet. She does still tell him he needs to leave and he is not welcome in that house. And honestly, I don't know how I would feel if they got back together. It would realistically depend on how it happens. At this point, if they decide to just get back together, I feel like it would be very out of character, and I feel like it would come out of nowhere. So I'm really hoping if they decide to make these characters get back together, that it does happen in a more organic way, and they actually show these two working together on their relationship to repair things. Because again, he quite literally called her his pet, and that is one of the last things that she said to him, was asking him if he still thinks of her as a pet. So definitely not a whole lot of romantic chemistry there, but still a really, really good scene. Speaking of reunions, we also get a reunion between Tech Jacket, Zoe, and her dad, and I will say these are two characters that I really enjoy. I think they might be the best father-daughter duo, or just father and child duo in the entire Invincible universe. I love how wholesome this relationship is. I love how honest they are with each other, and how she can just see right through everything that her dad has been through, and she asks if the shower hasn't been working, and he just makes a joke and says that the tech isn't as reliable. However, she sees right through this and knows that her dad was just incredibly worried about her. And again, I will say this is just a very wholesome father and daughter relationship, and I really, really love the dynamic between these two characters. I hope we get more between the two of them because it is a really interesting dynamic, especially considering it's one of the few dynamics that we get between a father and a child in this series that is actually positive and isn't abusive in any type of way. So I'm definitely going to be all for getting more of that. However, that is not it as far as reunions, because one of the reunions that I wanted probably more than anything in episode 5 was a reunion between Cecil and Omni-Man. And this reunion was perfect. The fact that it happened where Omni-Man was beating the shit out of Invincible in season 1. And as this is happening, we are hearing what happened over and over again. We're hearing the words that Omni-Man had said to Mark in those moments. We hear all the punches landing, and then we eventually hear Cecil's voice. He asks why Nolan is even there. They actually exchange a little bit of friendly banter, which I really did like, because remember, Cecil even said that the two of them were friends, and although Omni-Man tried to deny it in that moment, I think even he realizes, especially now, given all the changes he's been through, that he and Cecil truly were friends, just like he and Art were friends. So losing that relationship definitely affected him. But in this moment, although Omni-Man has shown change, and Cecil even acknowledges this and says that part of him is glad, he also says that Omni-Man still scares him, that Omni-Man isn't welcome here, that Omni-Man is not a hero. And then when Nolan tries to point out the fact that he almost died, Cecil literally throws back in Omni-Man's face how many people were killed, and if Nolan gets almost killed that many times, then maybe they could talk. That was one of the best lines in the entire episode, and Omni-Man is left absolutely speechless. Cecil does eventually end up leaving, and we're left with Omni-Man to just reflect on those words. However, speaking of reflecting on things, this brings me to another point in the episode that I really enjoyed, and that is when Eve tells Mark that he needs to go fly, he needs to go clear his head. We get to see as he soars through the clouds as a really nice soundtrack plays in the background. However, this really nice moment of self-reflection for Mark is cut short when we see Thrag, and at first, the audience is led to believe that he is not there, that he is just another manifestation that Mark is having because of his PTSD, that it is just a simple vision. However, Thrag very quickly assures him that this is real. And in this moment, Invincible attacks Thrag. And once again, Thrag eats every single one of Mark's punches. However, instead of trying to beat the shit out of Mark, which I absolutely thought he was going to do, he merely gets him away and says, "I just want to talk." And it's in this moment that Thrag reveals that the Viltrumites are already there, that they've been ordered to disguise themselves amongst Earthlings. And it's at this point that we actually get a little montage showing multiple Viltrumites undercover trying to blend in with Earth. We get to see Lucan. We actually see General Krieg as well, and it looks like he's already found a woman, which makes sense because their literal mission is to breed. However, someone that does not look on board with anything that's going on is Anissa. We actually see her walking throughout a park. She's getting whistled at by multiple men, and in this moment, all you see is a look of disgust on her face, and I feel like she's definitely going to have an issue with this mission, and she's going to see virtually every Earthling as beneath her, so she's probably not going to be able to carry this out, this mission that was given by Thrag. And after Thrag shares his mission and what the Viltrumites will be doing with Mark, he also assures Mark that no one will be harmed. None of the Viltrumites will interfere with anything that goes on with Earth. They won't try to influence anything. They won't destroy or hurt anyone. And at first, Invincible snaps and just multiple times says no. However, in this moment, he then over and over again sees all those visions. So it's at this point, after saying no so many times, he begrudgingly says yes. He accepts Thrag's offer. And Thrag in this moment does look really happy because he doesn't want genocide. And he spared Mark and Nolan for a reason, because they are both still Viltrumites. He cares about the preservation of Viltrum and all of their people. So I do genuinely believe him when he says that they aren't going to try to destroy anything, that they are just going to try to cohabitate with all of these Earthlings. However, that being said, once they do eventually all have children and repopulate themselves, I do find it pretty hard to believe that they won't interfere in anything that goes on Earth, especially because they right now have the power to overthrow Earth alone. And if the coalition would try to do anything, let's say 20 years down the line, they would probably have built up their population by a significant amount. So I feel like this is the type of deal that is very good in the short term. However, when we look at the long term, it's not a great look for Earth. But realistically, Mark can't do anything because even in his rage, he did not phase Thrag at all, and he and Omni-Man were absolutely no match for Thrag when they were trying to 2v1 him. So yeah, it makes sense that he makes this deal with Thrag. Now, all that being said, that is everything I absolutely loved about this episode. I did think it was really enjoyable. However, this episode was also a finale. So, although there were some parts that I absolutely loved, and I just spent almost 20 minutes talking about how many things I loved about this episode, I can't ignore the fact that this episode was a season finale, and a season finale should not not feel anticlimactic. And this episode felt so anticlimactic. When the end credits came, I genuinely thought it felt like a mid-season finale. It felt like next week we were going to get another episode. But we're not. We're not getting another episode until quite literally a year from now. And while I understand we can't have back-to-back-to-back-to-back perfect episodes, as we were on a crazy streak going from episode 5 to episode 6 to episode 7, that were all absolutely spectacular and some of the best in the entire series, I just feel like if you have those 3 episodes and then you don't stick the landing on this 4th season, it is going to leave a somewhat sour taste in people's mouth, just because you go from such incredible moments to moments that just genuinely feel so anticlimactic. There isn't any type of epic battle sequence. There isn't anything that realistically happens aside from the emotional moments. And don't get me wrong, I absolutely loved all of those moments, but it still left the episode feeling somewhat empty. And going on to some of the things that I feel like they could have had in the next season versus taking up time in this episode, that entire moment between Cecil and Sinclair trying to bring back Monster Girl and Robot, I don't understand why that couldn't have just been done in season 5, in episode 1. In my opinion, it would have fit a little bit better. It wouldn't have felt so out of place, and it wouldn't take screen time for a little bit more of a battle, potentially between Thrag and Mark. However, on the other hand, I do understand that showing a battle between the two of them is kind of pointless because Thrag is that much of a threat. So I feel like that might have been what they were also trying to iron home, was that Thrag was so much of a threat that it wasn't even worth it to actually show a fight between them, because any type of actual fight between them we got to see in episode 7, and it would not have lasted long at all. But that being said, one of the other things that I did slightly have an issue with, we do see Paul and Debbie a little bit in this episode, and we do find out that they actually broke up off screen. So I am a little bummed that we probably aren't going to get any more Paul. Now, is this because I am constantly seeing edits of Paul whooping Viltrumites' asses? Yeah, that might contribute to it a little bit. However, I did enjoy the dynamic between Debbie and Paul. I thought it really fit for both characters, especially Debbie, considering everything she's been through. And I feel like this was just a method to pave the way for Omni-Man and Debbie to get back together. And they even comment on this later when Debbie ends up going with Nolan to go back to Telestria to visit Oliver. Another thing that I just felt like was a bit weird, I don't know if Debbie does this in the comics, and it just feels a little out of place for her to go all the way to Telestria, and considering they're going to be alone on that ship for so long, you can definitely guarantee that as soon as they return to Earth, they will be a couple again. That is probably my biggest prediction for season 5, but all in all, that is essentially I have for this episode. Although I enjoyed it a lot, I just felt like it was very anticlimactic, and compared to other season finales for this show, it definitely was one of the weaker ones, if not the weakest, even though it had some of the best emotional moments. But I'm interested to hear from all of you guys. What did you think of the episode? Did you agree it felt a little anticlimactic, or did you enjoy everything in the episode? And did those visions Mark was having fool you too, or did you know that they were fake right from the start? Let me know in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And I'll see all of you in the next video. Goodbye.